Hello, and welcome to Hanratty on Karate. We have a nice sunny day here, although we've still got all the snow from the recent blizzard that blew in. Uninvited, I might say. Anyway, it's not bad, and it's probably going to get better. You got the feeling that spring is on its way, or as Jack London used to say, the trail's breaking up, and the bottom's falling out of the trails. One of my favourite books was The Call of the Wild when I was a kid. I used to imagine going along the trail was packed with ice and everything and then falling through, which people used to do, by the way. They relied on the ice to give them firm footing and cross the streams and cross the creeks that they had to get through. Anyway, I happen to be an advisor for Canada for a group called Karateka Remni. Now, this is an international group that recognizes serious black belts in the martial arts. It's not political, it's just people who are genuine martial artists, not the wankers you see all the time, throwing people over by shouting at them and flipping them over the shoulder with a shrug. None of that stuff. This is genuine people, and there's a number of advisors, like the head advisor, I think it's Malcolm Dorfman in South Africa. Malcolm's extremely experienced, member of KWF, which was Yahara's group. Broke away from the JKA a number of years ago. But they run a very nice group, really good karate, very traditional, very JKA style. I know the Dorfmans quite well. Malcolm's a real good friend of mine, and I've known his son Shane since he was a young kid. We used to meet them down in California at Nishiyama's camp. I remember Shane when he was, 8 or 9. He was really good at that time. But he's just, an athlete's son, been very athletic, but in his own right, I think he's probably one of the best you'll see. I mean, there's legends throughout the karate world that people go, oh, he's the best, or he's the best. It's kind of like boxers, saying, oh, would Muhammad Ali beat Mike Tyson? You never know. They're all the best in their time, and that's the way it is. Anyway, Chris Desser, who's taken over the running of the group in the last few years, asked me to check out a guy who'd applied for membership. It's easy to apply if you're a genuine black belt. I think it's over Sandan. You can apply for membership of the group. It's not political. It's just a bunch of guys. You can post what you want, what's happening in your dojo, what you're doing with your gradings, if you've gone to any competitions, even your experiences that people might benefit from. So it's quite a nice thing to be part of, and it's a nice thing to do. So I was asked to check out a guy, supposedly with a 10th dan. Now, if you know me, you know my views on really high grades. I don't believe anybody is worthy of a 10th dan. Anything after 6th, I think 5th, 6th dan is usually just honorary. And they used to only give out honorary 5th dans when I was younger. In fact, it used to cheese me off that people got honorary 5th dans, but some of them were like political figures or stuff like that. I remember being with Nakayama once, and I can't remember who he had with him that time. He always had some visiting black belt with him from the JKA. And we were in Vancouver, and we were using the police gymnasium for our seminar. And so the chief of police got presented with an honorary 5th dan. And that was okay. I mean, we knew he wasn't going to stick the belt on and go around shouting the odds or anything. It was just an honorary thing. But by the same token, I'd been really miffed. I think it was a couple of years later, I was down at Nishiyama's camp, or Nishiyama's dojo. I think it was his camp at La Jolla. He always had a camp in La Jolla every year. Very, very well attended from all around the world. And Nishiyama was always looking to grab support. He was a master technician, an extremely able instructor, probably one of the best technical instructors you'll ever meet. If you didn't ever meet him, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but amazing technical instructor. But unfortunately, he was extremely political, and he'd do anything to kind of get people to join the association because, the more members you got, the more clout you had. And his constant thing was trying to get karate into the Olympics, but under the auspices of the traditional rules, not the WKF rules, which eventually got in. And his reasoning, and I probably agree with his reasoning, was just money. They were run by a bunch of gangsters at the time who were on the board of the WKF, and so money counts, especially with the Olympic Committee. They're almost as corrupt as FIFA, maybe even more so if you have a good look at what's been happening in the Winter Olympics just lately. Anyway, Nishiyama had a guy from Eastern Canada. I'm not going to mention no names. I think he's passed now anyway. So he came from Eastern Canada and he offered to bring in, 10 or 12 clubs with maybe 200-300 members. And this guy was rubbish. I mean, you put him on the floor any day of the week and you'd probably have brown belts that, could do techniques and perform kata and do kumite a lot better than he could. Anyway, he got presented with a fifth dan, and that really turned me on at that time. I mean, I'd been thinking about leaving the JKA and Nishiyama in particular for a while. I mean, we used to bring him up all the time to do seminars, and he basically followed the same formula for seminars. You'd all sit down and he'd talk away for an hour, and the only thing you got was a sore butt for sitting on the floor. Every now and again you'd get up and you'd practice a punch, or looking for a power source. His big thing was producing power through the body, which all very well, and that's what we're all trying to do in the different techniques. We're trying to get as much power into a technique as we can. But there's other facets in karate that are just as important. Timing and distance and shifting and everything else. I'm not saying he didn't mention that stuff, but mostly he'd sit you down and there might be 100 of you, 50, 100 people at a seminar, and we'd have to pay for it. I mean, he didn't come up for nothing. And then maybe he'd do a grading afterwards. And what happened with the grading was you'd get your result right there and then, or you get it a week or two later by phone call, but you'd have to send your check off right there and then. And then if you were lucky, you might get a certificate within a year. Anything after a year, forget it. You just didn't get the certificate, no matter what it was said. Oh, you passed. Well, you never got a certificate, though, even though you paid for it. And it wasn't a little fee, it was a big fee. But anyway, getting back to the gradings and people who call themselves 10th dans, as I said, I was asked to have a look into and recommend whether we accept this so-called 10th dan into the Kudsai Yudan Shiremni. I was biased from the start, I'll admit. Looked up this guy, see if he was on anywhere on the net and all that. Couldn't find him. My thing was, if I do get asked to vet somebody, what I always ask them for is their history. Like, who graded you? Who did you train under? How long did you train under? And if you're going to be something anywhere over 7th or 8th dan, how old are you? How long have you been training? Because this is really, really important. I'm not talking about from the philosophical side. I know all about shuhari and all that, where we tend to go from beginner to exploration to master and forming your own thing. We'll start forming our own karate as soon as we step on the floor, because not everyone's capable of doing everything that everybody else does. So what you're doing is your own anyway. But it is important who you learn from. Because if you're not learning the fundamentals and the biomechanics and basics from a reliable source, then you're probably not learning them properly. And I understand that karate does evolve, and there's different ways of learning things these days than there was when I was doing it, which was basically repetition. And you kept doing it until you got it right, or you could make it work. And honestly, I believe making it work is more important than how it looks. So let's face it, that's what it's for. But it makes you wonder now if making it work is as important as making it look pretty, especially with the kata competitions that you've seen lately over the last, say, 5 years anyway. Then adding the kind of demonstration portion into the team kata. I mean, you pull out any team kata demonstration and say, what kata is this to demonstrate? You wouldn't know. Just people throwing themselves all over the place. It's kind of like the drama queens that come on and, throw energy balls at people. It's certainly not karate at all. And it's always a controlled environment, a controlled scenario. So it's not what's happening. It's not what would happen, or it's always what if this happens. It's the same with the downgrades, right? You can call yourself what you like because, of course, there's no regulation. There should be, but there isn't. So I'm not saying that this organisation, Udansha Remini, is trying to organise everything or trying to make it so that you have to belong to this or vet people. But if you want to be in a group, then you do have to you should be aware that there are certain criteria that you have to follow. And in my opinion, being a 10th Dan isn't one of them, because there's just so very few around. I mean, if you're going to go back to the roots, Funakoshi only made it to 5th Dan. So you're going to say you're better than Funakoshi? I don't think so. He was 5th Dan when he died, and he passed away as an old man. So all that time, and that's as far as he got. So as far as I'm concerned, that's all I ever wanted to be, being honest with you. When I first started, was a brown belt. I thought the brown belts were amazing because they just went in and wellied people left, right and centre. It's not that they didn't know the techniques. They did know the techniques. It's just that they hadn't mastered control at that stage. But they certainly mastered the power part of it and the technique part of it. I've seen loads of brown belts throw up amazing kicks and sweeps and punches, and they all went in. They all went in deep. I know myself, I had to take my show down 4 times and honestly think that Anoida Sensei is just sick and tired of seeing me. And what failed me every time was just going in and blathering the opponent in the kumite part of my grading. And, they go, John, control. He'd say control, and then when he hit you, he'd knock you on your back. So, it's not like, don't do as I do as I say. Because he was an extremely strong man, and just the force of his personality was enough to put you off anything. You'd back away. I tried to emulate that, because you do try to emulate and try to copy your instructors. And that's probably what you're supposed to do. I mean, one of the best methods of teaching is by example, right? It's one of the methods. It's not the only method. I know I teach people how to instruct, and there's so many different methods, and the more people go into the way the brain behaves and psychological patterns and all the rest of it, you come to learn that there's so many different ways that people do learn. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. Originally, it was like when I was at school, everything was like parrot fashion. Everything was learned by rote, if you know. You did your multiplication tables by rote. You all sat in a row and mouthed away like a little bunch of parrots. And that's the way you learned then. You learned by repeat. Whether you understood it or not, they weren't interested. As long as you blurted out the answer, you had to go through the thing in your mind. People don't always learn like that. Some people are very good at figuring things out in different ways, either tactile or by example or practicing. My wife is very creative. She's a designer, and she designs dance costumes, clothing, haute couture, all that stuff. I've tried to get her to go commercial, but she won't. So there goes my dreams of being a world-class designer or design manager, because she doesn't trust other people to do the same kind of job she does. And this happens a lot with karate instructors. They won't let anybody teach their class. It could be insecurity, but it could also be that they just want to do it that way, all right? Now, my wife doesn't teach. It's just that she doesn't feel that anybody can do as good a job as she does. But if you apply that to karate, it's just the same thing. Some people teach as though nobody else can do it as good as them. They may be right, I don't know. But there's no litmus test, really, for instruction. I guess the best way you have of validating whether you're a good instructor or not is your students, what your students come out. And I don't mean by how many students you've got, but the quality of the students. Now, over the years, I've managed to produce some really good students, national, international champions. It's very satisfying for me to do that. That's what I like to do. And you don't need to go around calling yourself 10th Dan to do that. I never call myself anything, any Dan grade. My student stick organizations I'm involved with will have given me different grades, and I'm very grateful to you, but I'll be honest with you, I think the last 2 or 3 grades are sitting rolled up in my bookcase behind me. I've never even bothered framing them. And I think the last one I got was just because I managed to reach 80 years old, which is an achievement, I feel, but it certainly doesn't demand any accolades. I mean, there's lots of people reach 80. There's lots of people don't, but there's lots of people do. I think if you contribute to your art, if you contribute, to what you're doing and what you're doing with people and your students appreciate you, then yeah, let's be grateful and, gracious and accept it. And that's what I've done. But I don't go around telling people that's what I am. It's not something you brag about. I'm not interested whether people know it or not. But if you're applying for membership of a group and the first thing you say is, well, I'm a 10th Dan, you're going to be looked at with a fair bit of skepticism in my book. So anyway, I didn't recommend that we accepted the guy. I couldn't find anything on him or any of his instructors. And the other thing, he didn't seem to have any copies of his certification. So, you're just going to get knocked back. It doesn't make you any better if you are a member of a group like that. It doesn't make you any worse either, which is what I tell my people when I'm doing gradings. We're doing a grading. Right before the grading, I'll say, okay, whether you pass or fail this grading, it's not going to make you any different than you are now, right? All you're doing with your grading is telling yourself that you've achieved this much, you've advanced this far, and you're telling me that you're ready to go a little bit further. That's the whole purpose of gradings. As I say, when you get 5th or 6th Dan, going further is purely philosophical in my mind. It's nothing to do with your physical. In fact, most people over 6th, 7th, 8th Dans, they can't perform the way you can when you're a 3rd Dan. 3rd Dan's probably the physical limit. Some amazing looking 3rd Dans. Although these days I've seen some people get to 3rd Dan in no time at all. And it certainly didn't look like the 3rd Dans that were around when I was coming up through the ranks. But anyway, that's the way it is. So if you're a black belt and you've got certain qualifications, you're interested in joining Karateka Hanratty, as I say, it's a non-political group. They just recognise you're a grade and you come from a traditional style and you're worthy of that grade. It's not whether you think you're worthy, but, whether you are or not. And they'll probably want your background, your history, copies of your certification. It's a good little community to belong to. So have a look at it, see what you think, and maybe have a go at joining up. Anyway, that's it for me. Any comments, questions, queries, as usual, I'll be glad to answer.